The third cycle that we need to understand for doing the fundamental analysis, and that cycle is product life cycle or PLC, product life cycle or PLC. And understanding of product life cycle is to strengthen our understanding about the company for which we are aiming to do the valuation. The product life cycle for any product will have four stages. The first stage is the introduction, intro phase, and that is where you that product is introduced, and then it enters into the growth phase, and again from the growth phase it enters into the maturity phase, and from the maturity phase it enters into the decline phase. And you can notice that these four phases are more or less same as we discussed in the context of the industry life cycle. The only phase which is missing here, and that was there in case of industry life cycle, and that phase was shakeout. And I'm sure you can understand why the shakeout phase is not applicable in case of the product life cycle, because in case of industry life cycle, there may be many companies who would be competing with each other, and therefore, depending on the situation of the economy and the phase of the industry life cycle, some of those companies will get out so as to make space for the other players to survive. In case of product life cycle, there is no such competition, because we are only talking about our product. So this is your product life cycle. Let us understand the impact of product life cycle on valuation. So product life cycle का valuations पर क्या impact होता है, तो इसको हम समझेंगे step by step. So the number one is the introduction phase. So in case of introduction phase, what are the peculiarities of introduction phase? The peculiarities of introduction phase is number one, so sales are low, high cost per customer, financial losses are there, innovative customers only come and try your products, and few competitors if any. So these are the peculiarities of the introduction phase that would happen in case of a new product. From the introduction phase, the product starts getting momentum. It reaches to a takeoff phase and takeoff point, and from the takeoff point it enters into the growth stage. And in the growth stage, what are the peculiarities in case of a product life cycle? So the peculiarities of a growth stage in case of a product life cycle are: number one, sales are increasing; number two, cost per customer is falling. And I'm sure we can understand it very easily why the cost per customer is falling, and that is because our cost of developing the new customer is fixed, and the number of customers that we are adding is increasing. So the same fixed cost is now getting distributed over a larger base of the customer, and that is why during the growth phase of the product life cycle, you would realize that the cost per customer will be falling. Profit, of course, will rise because the cost is coming down, number of customers are increasing, so you will have the benefit of economies of scale, you will have the benefit of operating leverage. As a result of that, your profit will rise because your number of customers are also increasing. At the same time, it is during the growth phase you will have many competitors also entering in, because industry, the product has taken a good shape, that there is a good demand for the product, there is a good awareness about the product, and people who are into the industry or in the business, they notice you making profit, and that is why they also want to have a share of the cake, and not let you eat the complete cake by yourself. And that is why during the growth phase you will have many competitors also entering into the band, jumping the bandwagon. Now, from the growth phase, you will have the maturity phase starting, and it is at the peak of the maturity that you have a saturation. तो एक ऐसा पॉइंट आता है पीक पे, मेच्योरिटी के पीक पे, जहाँ पर सैचुरेशन हो जाता है, यानी कि जो डिमांड है और जो सप्लाई है वो पूरी तरह से मैच हो रही है, और उसके आगे डिमांड एक्सपेंशन की कोई पॉसिबिलिटी नहीं है. तो डिमांड पीक पर पहुंच चुकी है, तो प्रोडक्ट की जो डिमांड है वो पीक पर पहुंच चुकी है, एंड दैट मीन्स इट इज फ्रॉम हियर you will have the decline phase starting. And what are the peculiarities of the maturity phase? The peculiarities of the maturity phase are: number one, sales is at the peak, cost per customer is the lowest, profits are high, it has become a mass market, and there are stable number of competitors. Since you have entered into, you have uh, crossed the growth stage, you are into the maturity stage. There's a good awareness about the product, there's a good awareness about the demand, everybody wants to have a cake share of the cake, and that is why you have many competitors that enter during the maturity phase of the product life cycle. And it is after the maturity phase that the decline phase starts. And in case of decline phase, as we discussed, in case of the economic cycle or trade cycle or business cycle, or as we discussed in the case of industry life cycle, same is the case with the decline. So after the maturity stage, you enter into the decline stage. What are the peculiarities of the decline stage? The peculiarities of the decline stage is: number one, sales are falling. Number two, cost per customer is still low. Profit start falling. Since the sales are falling, the profit also starts falling. Customer base starts contracting because since the product has entered into the decline phase, now there is a customer base is also contracting, and at the same time the number of competitors are also falling. Since the product has entered into the decline phase, obviously it is not profitable for many players. Since it is not profitable for many players start taking exit from the product, from the operations. As a result of that, the number of players who remain in the business become very small. And I'm sure you can understand very easily as to how the valuations of a company will be impacted depending on the stage of the product life cycle. So during the introduction stage, the valuations may be just okay. During the growth phase, the valuations will start becoming attractive. During the maturity phase, the valuations will become really attractive. And during the decline stage, the valuations will start also declining. And so this is how your product life cycle is, and this is how the four stages in case of product life cycle are, and this is how these four stages in the product life cycle will impact the valuations of a business.